Hi, today I'm here with Paula Chesley, who is running for the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board in District 4.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So why don't we start? You can introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about why you've decided to run for the park board.
Yeah, before we do that, can I give a shout out to your services here? Like, this is a very fancy video setup. If people aren't watching the video, you should be, and support Terry White's work. This is a very fancy setup.
This
and
is
I'm
through
sure it's,
This is through a program called Speak Minneapolis.
Okay.
So it's actually funded with Comcast and the city, and so they put on public TV and allow members to use their studios and equipment. It's a great program, but thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your work and all the local independent journalists and everything. Yeah.
So about you.
Okay, yes, more about me. So I'm Paula Chesley, everyone. I live in East Isles. That's the uptown part of District 4. I have been on the neighborhood board in East Isles. In collaboration with other safety walking clubs throughout the city, I helped found the East Isles Safety Walking Club. That's a partnership between residents, our green team in East Isles, and MPD working together to make the community safer, cleaner. And some other things about me in terms of the park board in particular is that in 2022, I co-hosted a series of podcasts on the Wedge Live about various beaches and parks in Minneapolis, talking about the various qualities of the beach, just very kind of lighthearted. So I did that in 2022.
Was this like a top 10 beaches in Minneapolis kind of show?
I thought it was. Yeah, they were definitely my top 10 beaches. Although I don't know. Yeah, we do have over 10 beaches. I don't remember how many we have. And it's interesting because leading up to those stories, several people I spoke with who were from the coast said, you all don't have beaches. And for me as a Midwesterner, I was because you're not from here.
No, I'm originally from Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh, so also a Midwesterner. But do you think that our beaches by the lakes, do you think that qualifies as a beach?
Well, absolutely, and especially if you go to someplace like Lake Superior, that absolutely, those are beaches with wakes and everything.
Yeah, well, some people, I am in agreement, but some people do not feel that way. Some people feel that in order for things to be qualified as a beach, they need to have an ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, those people don't need to move here.
Yeah, so I did that, and then in 2020, apologies if the listener has already heard this story, I was cited for toplessness in a Minneapolis park. Kind of a very rare incident of me going to a secluded beach with a friend, being in a pretty discreet situation and pretty discreet.
Is this Hidden Beach or a different beach?
It was a beach on Twin Lake, which is kind of by Theodore Wirth Park.
Okay.
We went there because, we were attracted by the secluded nature of it during the pandemic, didn't want to be around tons of crowds. And that was actually the day that the police were having a raid on that beach, I guess.
Huh. I didn't know they raided beaches. Why would they raid that one?
That term raid has a lot of connotations to it lately, but that is a term that beachgoers had used before. And so I don't know how else to say it. Yeah.
Would that be the MPD or the park police?
That's a great question. So it was actually a collaboration between MPD, the park police, and the Golden Valley Police. So lots of different jurisdictions there. So there were about 5 or 6 officers. And I just, as that happened to me, I thought, I am the best person to have this happen to because I believe in gender equity in our parks. I believe in fairness. And so to speak to the degree to which I believe I can get things done and get things done quickly, that happened in late June or early July of 2020. And by November, I organized friends, neighbors in collaboration with another friend to go to several park board meetings to talk about this ordinance, how it's gender discriminatory and also transphobic, and this is 2020. We would like to see something different in our parks. And so by November, the park board had changed that and repealed that ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and then,
So is it fair to say that incident was kind of the beginning of your wanting to be more involved in politics and the creation of rules and ordinances and things?
A little bit, but I have always been active in politics, but mostly from a supporting or volunteer kind of standpoint. You know, I started door knocking in 2008 with Keith Ellison and kind of continued that process and got more active after the 2016 federal elections. But yeah, I do think that was a contributing factor. Definitely some friends have talked to me about beach activism or park activism. So, yeah.
So, well, what was going on at that particular beach that the police wanted to raid it? I mean, I don't think it's just because you were there topless. There must have been other things happening there. What was going on?
So I do not frequent that beach very much. But as I understand it, the jurisdiction of it and also the official nature of it is a little blurry, and so people go there, but it is also not an official park in any way, or it is official park land, but it is not an official park beach, as I understand it. So there are people who will. I think that there are, people who at the time were smoking marijuana there, et cetera. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I can't speak to that too much because one time went and haven't really been back. I mean, I've been back just a few times.
So after all that, so why did you choose to run for the park board? What is it about being able to influence the park board that appeals to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was asked by several community members to run for this seat, and I really wanted to take time and see if it made sense for me to do it, to see if I could really contribute and move things in a direction that our community wants, and also that with the aspirations that I have, to see if that made sense for me. And then I just had some very personal moments and personal memories about our parks, and I think that maybe people share having a lot of personal memories about our parks. One was just thinking back to my first cat when she passed away in 2023. We would always the closest park to me is Lake of the Isles, and we would always walk to the park in a stroller, go by a bench, and then I would let her out of the stroller and she would walk home with me without a leash, right?
That's so funny because my sister-in-law, who used to have 3 cats, would take them to the Lake of the Isles in a stroller. I wonder if you guys ever shared a bench together.
I have a very particular bench, yeah. So when she passed away, I was sort of forlorn, and so I just kept going to that bench for a couple of weeks after she died. And I would just sit there and I would honestly cry, just kind of looking out into the lake or just be sad, And the outpouring of support that I had from community members at that park who didn't even know me was incredible. People spoke to me about the passing of their pets, the meaning of their pets to them. People who I didn't even know offered encouragement, said I was a good cat mom and everything. And just that memory in our parks and the parks serving as a space for community was very important to me. And then I also took some time away up north and at the end of May and was just, I teach yoga and meditation. I was meditating by this waterfall, Caribou Falls, and I just kind of had this impression that nature is an important thing and that I want to help create access to that, and I want to steward the access to that to people in Minneapolis. So those are some moments.
Yeah, you certainly touch on, I think, one of the reasons that parks are such an integral part of life in the city, right? People use them for many different reasons, to recharge, to exercise, to enjoy laying out on the beach, all those kind of things. So your website is paulaforparks.org,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
I took a look at it today. It looks like you've got about a dozen sort of priorities. I think, people can look at them if they want to see the whole gamut, but I thought maybe you could just talk about the top 3 or 4.
Yeah, this is great. It's hard to narrow it down. I'm a little bit of a policy wonk, I will say. So I like the idea of doing things and being very transparent about what I want to do. But I was over at Stevens Square Park last Friday, and folks were asking me what I want to do with the parks. And I want to just say to folks, if you are in District 4 or elsewhere, it's really important to me to elevate community voices, right? They're not my parks, they're everyone's parks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to know what you want for your parks, and then I want to help make that happen. So for example, in Stevens Square, they were talking about the pathways that need resurfacing, or talking about how they would like a full basketball court maybe instead of a half basketball court. And if so, how could we do that without removing old growth trees? And so those are some questions that are really important to me that perhaps falls under constituent services and listening. That's something that will be my top priority, just making sure that people, how can we make people's lives better through the parks?
Number one would be constituent services.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Number two, it's hard to put them in order. And to be fair, I have a survey on my website, and somebody who completed it said it's hard to pick just 5. So I think another one is, this is maybe not an exciting topic for listeners, I'm not sure, but I have talked with staff at MPRB, I've talked with other commissioners, and it has become abundantly clear that the budget of the park board is going to be a top issue. And so one of the things that I want to do is really advocate for Minneapolis parks wherever we can get funding and however we can get funding. So that means advocating at the state level, advocating at the city, making sure that we have quality public-private partnerships, making sure that we can apply for grants so that we really have an all-hands-on-deck approach to getting money for our parks, because our parks in Minneapolis are some of our top amenities. It's why people move here. It's what people like about the city.
So, is there a concern about the budget? Was there cuts, or is it just that they're trying to expand services?
That's a great question. So I am learning here, but about 80% of the park budget is dependent on property taxes.
Right.
And our property taxes went up quite a bit last year, and they will be going up quite a bit this year. They cannot continue to go up at those rates. So we need to be able to find other revenue sources. We need to be able to get the money from the city that we need. So yes, there is a budget concern.
Okay. So constituent services, budget.
Yes.
What's another one?
Creating more green spaces downtown.
Okay.
Yes. You asked a little bit about the downtown conservatory, and
that was one of the things I thought when I read your website that really stood out to me as a unique and interesting idea. Because I've been to the Como Conservatory and just loved it and found it such a rejuvenating place to be, and I thought it was an interesting idea, and I'd like to hear more about it.
Yeah, so I was talking with Adam Dunnick actually just today about more green spaces downtown and how we can do that, whether that's on Nicollet Avenue or elsewhere. I'm aware that there's a neighborhood parks plan, so wanting to, just check in with that, making sure that we can have green spaces throughout downtown. But so
Adam Dunnick is the CEO of the Downtown Council.
Yes.
Correct? Yeah,
yes.
And he was nice enough to be interviewed on this show too. So what did he say about the idea? Did he like it? Or you?
Yeah, he likes it. He said he loves it. So
great,
I'm excited about that. But so here's my rationale for it, and if I can pitch it to your listeners.
Please, pitch it.
So we are getting more residents downtown. That's really exciting because it's not necessarily the case in other downtowns, like in Portland or in St. Louis. They're seeing an exodus of residents from their downtown. So that's really exciting. And for those residents, we need to be able to offer services and amenities. The other thing that we need is we need things and places for tourists to go to. People come to the convention center. They want walkable places to go to. And we know that green spaces are inherently relaxing, are inherently uplift people's well-being. And so having a year-round space for that, I think, is very important in a place where many people can walk to, in a place that's underserved in terms of our parks. We also have a situation where buildings and lots downtown are available at historically low prices. In my mind, we can't afford not to do this to create this amenity and this service. So I'm really excited about it. I know that people can be concerned about the cost. I have heard from many people in District 4 saying we want to maintain what we have and more than creating new things. And I think it's very important to be able to fully maintain everything that we have. Sometimes that gets short shrift. I also think that we as a city need to remember that we can do big things, that we can dream, that we can have really exciting amenities. And so that's a thing that I really want to advocate for. And I think that we can find the money, we can find it, and it doesn't mean that we are going to be letting go of maintaining other spaces in our park system.
Which just reminds me, and my own little pet peeve, I guess, is that some of the fields like baseball, they're not really well maintained, and it's kind of funny because you'll go to one of the parks here, and baseball, or basketball, those kind of things are not great. And then, like, if you go out into the suburbs to play, they're like fantastic, So I don't know, really, that's not a question, but it's just something that I notice in terms of.
Do you use those baseball fields, or your kids?
My kids, okay. And and it's like there's coaches that are like buying their own spare baseballs because the park doesn't have them, and stuff like that, where it does kind of along. And I want to hear more about. You have a survey on your website, which I think is a great reflection of your wanting to listen and prioritizing constituent services. So I want to hear what they're saying. I guess when people say we want to maintain versus build new, that was just the ball field thing was what came to my mind. Although I still love the idea of a conservatory downtown.
We can have both, yes.
Tell me more about your survey and kind of what you've heard. And
well, first of all, we are not at the numbers that are statistically significant. So everyone, please take my survey. It's at paulaforparks.org/priorities. But the responses that we are getting, literally everyone. So I ask people to select their top 5 issues.
I didn't take
parks.
It, by the way.
Terry,
I should have. I know. I saw the link and I thought, that's a great idea. I should take that, and I didn't take it, but I will.
I will. About the baseball
I will.
Fields.
Yes.
Okay. Everyone who took that survey listed safety as a top priority, and that is something that really varies according to different people, right? Sometimes that might mean safety from gun violence or gun violence prevention. That might mean pedestrian safety. That might mean cyclist safety. So there are a lot of different aspects of that, and I'm learning about that. I also met with Police Chief Jason Ojado.
I saw that. I saw your newsletter about that interview. I enjoyed it, and I can certainly see how safety would be after what happened at Boom Island would be a top concern.
Yeah. Yep.
But tell me a little bit more about your meeting with them.
We talked about safety, obviously, but Chief Ojado has worked in the park system ever since he was 14. So he is an incredible wealth of information about all things park related. I definitely want to consult with all staff before taking votes to see what their perspectives are. We talked about scooters and electronic bicycles like e-bikes, and how people are using parkways a little differently now. As when they were designed 50 years ago, it was designed for leisure. Now people are using those spaces as commutes. So they are going faster than the speed limit of 10 miles an hour, which is the park speed limit on on bike lanes and in the parks. So, like, how to create a space where people can safely do that commuting? Does that mean on the parkways, the roads? Does that mean, expanding those lanes? So we talked about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about how enforcement is not really a practical idea just due to lack of resources, enforcement of those safety speeds. So
Yeah. What was the numbers? I think there's 30 park police, and he thought he needed 50.
35 sworn officers.
35.
And then in order to have the level of service that Minneapolis residents want from their parks, he said it would be about 50. So that's quite a bit more percentage-wise.
Okay. So people are a little bit worried about safety, as they are in the general city as well. Let's talk a little bit about...
But overall, just Chief Ojado did say that overall our parks are pretty safe. So,
Okay.
So the residents can...
Well, I know a big issue, and I guess maybe you mentioned it with the Twin Lakes incident, was smoking marijuana in the parks. And it was a little controversial, the policy that the park board came up with, which was, it was basically kind of like asking people to not do it. But it's not an ordinance.
That's right.
There's no enforcement.
Yeah,
it's
it's
kind
a
of like,
rule,
we'd rather you didn't do this.
Yeah. Yep. And the issue around that is that with that rule, stewards of the park, as I understand it, but police officers can definitely ask people not to do it. It's not enforceable. I did talk to Chief Ojado about in which context they would actually, go up to people and say, please don't do that here. And they said, for example, if it's, someone who's smoking around a bunch of kids. That's the only example he gave. Again, just limited resources.
And what if it's the bunch of kids who are smoking it? Then what happens?
We didn't ask. I didn't ask.
Okay. That's the follow-up question for the next meeting.
Okay. That's outside of the park jurisdiction. Perhaps that's like a state issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So District 4 is a pretty crowded race. There's 3 other candidates vying for the spot. So what do you think sets you apart?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I want to say that for at least 2 of the candidates, Conrad and Jason, I have known them for years now. I think they're nice people. I think we might have a different vision of how we would serve in this role, but I certainly like them. And for Andrew Gibo, getting to know him, and I think he's a fine person as well. I think that what sets me apart, again, is perhaps this action-oriented record around, changing the toplessness ordinance at the parks, or with the safety walking club in East Isles. That was another thing that, we were able to get off the ground about 2 months from the time that I brought it to the neighborhood association. So I think that's a good track record. And then I think that I am qualified to bridge divides. I'll talk with anyone. I want to, I've been meeting with lots of different staff, park board commissioners. So I've met with Meg Forney and Kathy Abene, perhaps considered more moderate commissioners. And I've also met with Tom Olson, who's perhaps considered a more progressive commissioner. And I was able to find common ground with everyone, even though, especially Tom and I talked about the mall vote. We would have taken different votes there, but it was a really civil conversation, and I think there was some learning and growth, perhaps on both sides.
So what does that mean that you guys would have taken? How would you have responded on the mall?
I would have voted to keep the parking on the mall.
Okay.
Yep.
And the thinking there is because fire needs to get in, or what was your?
So I was on the East Isles Neighborhood Association throughout this process. I saw multiple presentations of that plan for the mall. I am a single woman, and I like to go out at night and come back home sometimes at midnight or 1 a.m. And the idea of me having to park and walk an additional block away, so perhaps 2 blocks at night, by myself, in the context of where Uptown has been in the last 5 years, would have been prohibitive for me.
Sure.
And it's not like, I personally have a garage, so I want people to know that this issue with the mall affected people of all socioeconomic statuses, particularly renters who live in naturally occurring affordable housing where there isn't parking, and so they're parking on the street. If you go onto the mall and look at where those parking parking spaces would have been removed, there are a bunch of 2010 Honda Civics there, right?
Yeah.
So those are the kind of folks who are getting impacted by this. And I will say, it's not just women who have safety concerns. It's a lot of people in our city, people who are mobility limited, et cetera. So that was my sort of reasoning for thinking about which vote I would have taken. And also, frankly, just going to those meetings and seeing the folks who were impacted and seeing that it was truly a coalition of renters and homeowners in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you bring up a good point, and I feel like on a lot of these issues, people assume like everybody is as confident and able-bodied as they are, and they sometimes don't put themselves in the shoes of someone who's maybe older than they are, or feels more vulnerable at night, or has accessibility issues. So, yeah, that's a great point. So one other thing I noticed on your website, you say that you're proudly pro-labor.
Yes.
So I wanted to hear, like, what does that mean to you? And it's my understanding that the commissioners don't have any direct interaction with, like, the union or deciding on the wages and contracts and things like that. But so tell me, what does the proudly pro-labor mean to you?
Yeah, this is, I think a lot of park board candidates will be speaking to their stances on labor because of a kind of contentious strike in 2024 with the park board. And so I just want to say, I'm talking about the values of being pro-labor and the leverage that the park board actually has. My direct line will always be open to everyone. I think it's really important to be able to listen to constituents and also to be able to listen to our park board workers and to hear their perspective. And, perhaps in so doing, we can avert another strike like that. So, I really want to bring in their voices and to be able to have them be heard and seen. Labor is how we created the middle class, basically, in the U.S. And so I definitely support that. I work at a place where I would love to personally see a union. I work in healthcare, and so I think that would be very effective. And so, I just, proudly pro-labor.
I don't know if you've had a chance to meet with any of the unions or anything so far. I mean, I know your campaign is kind of just getting started here for the park board. So.
Not yet, and we, it's definitely a top priority of mine. We also have the convention coming up in 3 or so weeks, so that is also very much a top priority, reaching out to delegates, planning for that. So, but yeah, I will be reaching out to LIUNA
and just to
and other unions,
To clarify, you're seeking the DFL nomination for endorsement. Okay. Because I have interviewed people and I've assumed that they are seeking that, and then found out like, oh, I'm not interested in that. So I just wanted to confirm. Okay. Well, I do like to find out something a little bit fun about people. So I'm wondering if there are any. And since we're talking about parks, if there's any particular events happening in the parks that you're looking forward to this summer, if there's, maybe how do you use the parks yourself, and what are you looking forward to this summer?
This is a great question. Do you do yoga, Terry?
Do I look like I?
I'm
no,
not
I
gonna,
don't.
I'm not gonna profile people.
I wake up with a sore back every day. I know I should. My sister-in-law teaches yoga, and I do not do it.
That's okay. So there's no shame.
My exercise right now is walking my dog.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, I support that. I do yoga, and I like to do yoga. Yeah.
Although that's a controversial subject too, because I go to the And I want to take it off topic.
Oh
'cause
no,
I want to hear what you're doing.
I can't wait to hear about yoga controversy.
Well, no, the controversy is the dog park at Minnehaha Falls, right? It's an
Oh,
off-leash area.
Yes, I've heard about this a little bit.
It's an absolutely gorgeous dog park. I love taking my dog there, and I've yet to talk to any other dog walkers who are happy with the changes that are coming. So I don't mean to quiz you unexpectedly about
No, it's
it.
okay.
But
I need to go visit it.
well, I think the controversy is they're putting up some fencing that
Yeah.
is changing the
Yep.
beaches and things, if you want to call them beaches, because they're on a river, not an ocean. But so anyway, a lot of people are just not happy with what parts of that park will now be accessible. I don't know how much control the park board has over it. They do have some, but there's other land owners there, like
Yeah.
the Veterans Association. I think some native or indigenous land, and a lot of things are happening there. I think it's still a little bit up in the works, but maybe next time we can talk about that, because unless you already have thoughts, but it is something that if you're into dogs, then
I've heard about the issue, and I need to learn more. My understanding, and I might be wrong about this, but my understanding is that private entities do have a claim to those lands, and so the park board needs to revisit the boundaries of that dog park, and people aren't happy.
yeah. Well, if you've enjoyed it for years and now it's got to change.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Change can be difficult.
Yeah, yep.
Sorry. Okay, so what are you doing at the parks this summer? What are you looking forward to?
I just posted about this on social media today. I am a huge fan of the yoga program at Hidden Beach or East Cedar Lake Beach. Free yoga Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. And it is different levels according to the day. So Sundays are slow flow, Tuesdays all levels, and then Thursdays are a little bit more challenging. And I love that. That's sponsored by the Kenwood Neighborhood Organization. So thank you, Kenwood Neighborhood Organization, for that. I also love the beach there. That is my home beach, as it were. And outside of that, I'm going to be doing a lot of going to all the different parks in District 4 today. I biked here. We're at a place in Northeast. I biked from uptown so that I could actually see, the lay of the land, get an idea for the parks, go through various parks. So that's something that I'll be doing.
Okay, great. So are there any topics that you wanted to talk about today that we've missed?
I mean, there are so many. I have issues, right? Like I have, preserving outdoor skating rinks. I know that that's a top priority for folks. Tackling litter,
Ice
keeping
skating,
our
right?
park. Yes.
So there was some kind of controversy there on this last winter, right? I think, did the park not have the money to staff them all and maintain them all, or?
The concern is that with climate change, it is becoming very, very expensive to operate the skating rinks. In particular, the one at Lake of the Isles with the warming house. It's the only lake-based skating rink in the park system. And so last year we had, an okay skating season, but the time before that, I think it was only for about 2 weeks. And it costs in the tens of thousands of dollars to create that skating rink and to move that warming house, et cetera.
Right.
So, some things that I'd like to do there are to establish maybe food vendors.
So just so I understand,
Yeah, sorry.
because I read some headlines, but I didn't really understand what was going on. So the ice is basically not lasting as long.
Yeah, it's not as safe, due to climate change.
And so the cost to set it up, people are questioning whether it's worth it anymore because the rink isn't stable for a long period of time. Is that
Yes,
kind of it?
this is my understanding. Yeah.
Okay.
So it used to be, that we could rely on that for at least a couple months, and now, maybe longer. But now it's just a couple weeks.
I remember taking my kids to that skating rink, and it's nice that they have. If you can afford your own skates, that's the way was the way to go when I went there 10 years ago, because if you had to get the skates there, you were really on your own trying to find a left and a right of the same size. Yeah,
Okay.
it was a challenge that worked or that had laces. But I hope they end up keeping that skating available, because I thought it was a great experience.
Yeah, we are a hockey state,
Yeah.
I don't know what the stats are in terms of number of Olympians that come out of Minnesota that play on hockey teams, but I mean, it's a good chunk, and probably a good portion of that is due to all of the hockey rinks that we have here in Minneapolis and elsewhere in the state.
It's great that you bring it up, because when I asked the question, I had pictures of summer and outdoor theaters and stuff in my head, and they do play a big role in the winter. I mean, my kids go there and play basketball, or like when my kids were really little and I needed to get out of the house, I would take them there just to the rec centers to have a place out of the house. So, yeah, important in the winter too.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we can do for that is, again, to establish, snacks, sales of food and warm beverages, so that something like the warming house on Lake of the Isles can be self-sufficient, or at least close to it. That's a process because you need to get permits and perhaps vendors, et cetera. But I think we need to be thinking in that direction.
I see. So make it to ensure that it stays, even if climate change makes it so we can only skate for 2 weeks, is to have some sort of profit-generating businesses around it.
Yes, either that, or perhaps having the residents come together to support that. I think that there's a lot of goodwill toward that in the immediate area surrounding the lake. So we'll see.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you for coming in today and talking about your campaign.
Thank you. Yeah.
And again, how should people find out more about you and contact you?
Great question. Well, if you are a delegate to the city convention and you live in District 4, definitely reach out. I'll be reaching out to you. But also, the website is paulaforparks.org. And then please shoot me an email. My email is hello@paulaforparks.org.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And I'm going to go cut the recording off here.
That was great. Thank you.